podcast.
There's a command post. We have some videotape of that we could roll for you that shows the police here, LAPD, FBI, state and federal agents all assembled to keep a very tight eye on the comings and goings at the Kodak Theater. We also had a chance to chat with the number 2 guy in charge of the LAPD about the extraordinary measures being taken.
So I feel we've got it pretty locked down as far as contingency plans. We've got the area surrounding the venue. The streets are all pretty much blocked off. Some hard, some soft, with access to some and not to others. We've got several checkpoints where people come through. They're going to be magged. In the past, they didn't go through the magnetometer just for spectators. Now, with the way we've got it run today, they're going to do that.
I also understand they're taking air samples as well.
Right. Yeah, we have people here, both from the fire department, the state, and our own people from our hazmat teams taking air samples as the thing plays out.
Now, we also, Aaron, have protesters here. We have a mix. We've got over here people who are against the war in Iraq. Across the street, we have people who have signs in support of the troops in Iraq. And also, there's some concern, Aaron, I should tell you, that the police have. There was a stolen movie prop truck. It was stolen from Burbank, and they're concerned about that and trying to find it. Aaron?
Well, they got their hands full, don't they? They have both signs penned in right next to each other. And let's just hope everybody behaves tonight. Charlie, thank you very much. Charlie Feldman out in Los Angeles. The Oscars being given tonight. Coming up on the top of the hour, for those of you just joining us, we'll catch you up on the day's events, and they have been significant and often difficult. Heidi Collins has that duty.
Yes, they certainly have. Thanks, Aaron. I'm Heidi Collins in the CNN newsroom. Coming up in 90 seconds, the war in Iraq live from the front lines. But first, the latest news at this hour. Within the last 15 minutes, we've gotten reports of an Apache helicopter attack on Republican Guard positions south of Baghdad. Exact details remain sketchy on that outcome. But earlier, the Pentagon was blunt, calling this a tough day. You are looking at close engagements in the Fall Peninsula. It was a tough day for U.S. troops because Iraqi resistance emerged around the vital port cities of Qasr and Basra. But the sharpest fighting, and that's the Pentagon's word, has come in and around Nasiriyah today. You're looking now at some of the long-range fighting there. At closer range, it turned deadly. An Iraqi rocket-propelled grenade, RPG as they called it, killed and wounded several Marines when it struck a troop carrier. 12 men and women from the Army are now unaccounted for. U.S. forces were about halfway to the Iraqi capital, which you're seeing live now, just about 4 a.m. local time. There have been some enormous explosions there within the last hour. Iraqi TV has been showing pictures of Saddam Hussein, and Iraqi officials say he is alive and well. But Senator Richard Lugar told CNN today that U.S. intelligence believes he was actually taken from his Baghdad bunker on a stretcher after Wednesday night's bombardment. Officials have confirmed that a U.S. Patriot missile remotely launched and guided by satellite to its target knocked a British Tornado GR-4 fighter jet out of the sky today. The British Defense Ministry says the friendly fire incident near the Kuwaiti border killed both the pilot and co-pilot. Both the U.S. and Britain were the targets of protests by tens of thousands of Pakistanis today, reportedly including some of that country's extremist Muslim leaders. In New York, protesters on both sides made a point of supporting the troops while splitting over the president's decision to send them into battle. Coming up in this next hour of CNN's coverage of the war on Iraq, for those of you who missed Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld's talk with CNN's Wolf Blitzer earlier today, we'll play a large part of that interview. We'll also take a closer look at the role British troops are playing in the war in Iraq, and also war coverage Iraqi style, to say the least. It's different. Now, CNN's continuing coverage of the war in Iraq, live from the front lines.
Baghdad endures another night of bombing, explosions less than an hour ago. And along the road to Baghdad, sometimes smiles and waves, and other times gunfire and grenades. Coalition forces on the move, 5 Americans taken POW.
If there's somebody captured, and it looks like there may be, I expect those people to be treated humanely.
Both sides, of course, take prisoners of war. How they are treated says a lot. American government reaction has been very angry at how the Iraqis have treated the 5 Americans. And of course, tonight there is also this. Democracy in the streets. New polls are out tonight, just coming out, and we'll have that as well. Good evening again, everyone. If you were just joining us, we're glad to have you with us. I'm Aaron Brown at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
Good evening, Aaron. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Kuwait City. Let's take our viewers to Baghdad right now, where it's been another night of anti-aircraft fire and explosion. The latest detonations came just a little less than an hour ago. 3 huge explosions, we're told, by eyewitnesses on the ground. Some of the largest, we're told, since this air war by the United States and Britain began. One of the targets, reportedly, the Iraqi Air Force building, the compound in Baghdad, central Baghdad, other compounds in southeastern Baghdad, targets that had been hit previously. The U.S. Air Force clearly anxious to hit those targets once again. We're following a number of developments in the war in Iraq. For our viewers, if you've been away for the past few hours, let's begin with an update of how this entire day has unfolded. Here's CNN's Miles O'Brien.
6:47 a.m. Eastern. Arabic language networks begin airing video from Baghdad that purportedly shows Iraqi authorities searching for a downed U.S. pilot. The Pentagon later denies any U.S. or British aircraft are missing over Baghdad. The search is eventually stopped. 7:08 a.m. Eastern. CNN's Barbara Starr says the Pentagon confirms a British Tornado aircraft was accidentally shot down Saturday by a U.S. Patriot missile as it returned from a mission over Iraq. Recovery efforts are underway, but hope of finding survivors is dwindling. 8:09 Eastern. CNN's Walt Rogers, embedded with the 3rd Squadron, 7th Cavalry, reports soldiers are telling him Iraqis are using women and children as human shields around military installations. An hour later, he reports his unit has taken heavy fire that injured 1 soldier as the squadron continues moving toward Baghdad. 10:06 Eastern. CNN's Alessio Vinci, with a Marine unit in southern Iraq, reports heavy fighting and some casualties near Nasiriyah.
A few moments ago.
11:03 a.m. Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr reports the military has begun contacting families of up to 10 members of an Army maintenance unit, some of whom were captured, some of whom killed near Nasiriyah.
I would say...
11:33 a.m. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld tells CNN's Wolf Blitzer, following the airing of interviews of American POWs on Iraqi TV, that Iraq is violating the Geneva Conventions with that video. 2 p.m. U.S. military leaders say American troops defeated Iraqi forces at Nasiriyah, but they say 10 U.S. soldiers were killed and 12 were reported missing after Iraqis ambushed a supply convoy. 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:30 in Baghdad. Huge explosions are heard and buildings are set ablaze in the Iraqi capital, apparently from a new wave of airstrikes. Miles O'Brien, CNN.
And for more details on what's happening in the war in Iraq, be sure to go to CNN.com. Lots of useful information there. I want to go back to CNN's Carl Penhall. He's one of our journalists embedded with the U.S. troops. Carl, when Aaron spoke to you just a little while ago, you had a headline there. You and your troops, the troops that you're covering, now only 60 miles outside of Baghdad. That's the deepest penetration we've heard of since the start of this war. It seems very close to Baghdad.
Indeed, Wolf, the strikes tonight were on positions, on Republican Guard positions, about 60 miles south of Baghdad. Very definitely the start of the major approaches to Baghdad, urban areas, and like I say, heavily defended by the elite Republican Guards. The Apache attack helicopters were going up against T-72 tanks towed artillery pieces. These all belong to the 2nd Armored Brigade of the Medina Division of the Republican Guard. The positions were if you look on a map, to the west of the city of Karbala, north of the city of Al-Hilal, and these are positions that straddle the land between the river Euphrates and the river Tigris. So like I say, the approaches to the southern side of Baghdad. The mission started somewhat after midnight. It lasted more than 3 hours. I was flying on a Black Hawk helicopter. That was the command and control helicopter for one of the battalion's first attack that was involved in that fight. From that vantage point, we were in a holding pattern about 20 kilometers, so some 15 miles south of the area where the strikes were taking place. It must be said, a little bit difficult to get a full picture of what was going on there. Initially, in the first stages of the combat, I did see 3 or 4 large balls of flame and plumes of smoke coming up from positions which appear to have been struck by Apache attack helicopter weapons. Following that, though, the pilots of the helicopter in which I was traveling, who obviously had a much better vantage point, were telling me that there were very heavy barrages of anti-aircraft fire, and those were being put up in response to the arrival of the Apache attack helicopters on the scene. Some of the U.S. pilots have reported their aircraft have taken fire, but at present I haven't been able to ascertain or get a full picture from commanders as to the true extent of what went on there, and also what positions, how successful they may have been in striking those Republican Guard positions, Wolf.
Carl Penhall, he's one of the embedded journalists, one of the CNN reporters with U.S. troops deep inside Iraq right now. Carl, thanks very much for that report. Stay safe over there. We'll get back to you from time to time, certainly when you can. There have been many major developments today in this war. One of the most important, of course, is the taking of those U.S. soldiers as prisoners of war by the Iraqis. While unsettling, it probably will not change the military strategy. Let's go to our senior Pentagon correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. He's covering all of these late-breaking developments. Jamie?
Well, Wolf, according to the account here at the Pentagon, there was a U.S. military supply convoy that was made up of 6 vehicles. It was supposed to hook up with combat forces in southern Iraq. Apparently, the commander of that convoy took a wrong turn and went into an area where there were no U.S. forces. They encountered some Iraqi troops. There was a firefight, an ambush, and some number of U.S. military personnel were killed. Others were wounded. Others were captured. Today, the incident was acknowledged by a spokesman at the U.S. Central Command in Tampa, Florida.
There were 12 soldiers from the ambushed convoy that could not be accounted for. We believe them to be in the custody of the irregular forces that conducted the ambush, and their status is not known.
Of course, the headquarters now is operating out of their forward base in Qatar, in Doha. There, the Lieutenant General John Abizaid, who is one of the deputies, gave a briefing on how the war was going, and despite what he described as the sharpest engagement of the war thus far at Nasiriyah, he said the war plan is on track and victory is certain.
We are satisfied with the strategy of our campaign plan. It's on track. It's being very successful in the broadest military sense. There will be times when actions will happen throughout the sector where loss of life will occur, but I would also emphasize that we do not consider the actions taking place in the sector as a defeat of any kind.
Also tonight, a report that originated in the Jerusalem Post, which is gaining some credence here at the Pentagon, although we have to tell you about it with a grain of caution. It does appear that the U.S. military has taken a suspected chemical weapons facility in southern Iraq at a place called An-Najif, about 150 kilometers south of Baghdad. We are told that this may be a chemical weapons facility. General Abizaid was asked about it at that U.S. Central Command briefing in Qatar today, and he said simply that he could not confirm the report, but he did confirm that 2 Iraqi generals were in custody, having been taken prisoner, and they were providing them with information. It looks like the note of caution here is this does appear to be some kind of a chemical production facility, but whether it's a chemical weapons facility may have to wait until they can get a closer examination of the location. Wolf?
It's a sensitive issue. I know when I interviewed the Defense Secretary, Jamie, Donald Rumsfeld, earlier today, I asked him if the U.S. and coalition forces had found any weapons of mass destruction capabilities inside Iraq. And he said, as of the interview, 11:30 a.m. Eastern this morning when I interviewed him, he said the answer was no. So maybe this has happened since. Maybe it's not necessarily weapons of mass destruction. It may simply be some sort of chemical facility, as you point out. But right now, the focus is trying to find weapons of mass destruction, presumably before they're used, if in fact they're used. That's one of the highest priorities. There's no evidence, as far as I can tell, Jamie, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's been any use of weapons of mass destruction, chemical or biological, in any of the warheads, the missiles that have been launched so far.
No, there hasn't been, and General Abizaid again mentioned at his briefing 2 things. One is he also said they had no evidence that they'd found any weapons of mass destruction, but again, he may have been reserving judgment until he had more information about this particular facility. He also mentioned again the concern that troops near Al-Qut may have, south of Baghdad, may have chemical weapons. That's based on the pre-war intelligence the U.S. had that some chemical weapons capability may have been provided to the Republican Guard there. So that's an area where they're going to be watching very carefully as they approach those forces. Wolf?
And we do know, Jamie, from military officials that some of the targets that have been bombed so far are suspected weapons sites. We don't know the success or failure of those bombing missions. Jamie McIntyre, our senior Pentagon correspondent, thanks very much. This is a huge story, potentially, Aaron, and of course we're going to check it out.
Well, and yeah, we would just underscore potentially. This is what makes this sort of reporting on the fly tricky, because you get these reports and you just want to, particularly one on a subject as sensitive as this one, take your time and get it right, and that's what we're trying to do here. The lead of the day clearly is that some Americans have been taken prisoner of war. It's the most disquieting scene. We saw it a little bit earlier. We saw it. We have not yet aired it. We're dealing with that question. Soldiers are trained on this. CNN's Miles O'Brien's with General Wesley Clark, retired General Wesley Clark, the former NATO commander, talk a little bit more about these issues of prisoners of war and the rest. Gentlemen?
Aaron, thanks very much. I'll tell you what, before we do that, before we talk about the lead of the day, let's talk about this possible lead, which is this situation in Najaf. Let's, first of all, show you where this is, take you to the map, zoom you in on this spot, which is about 95 miles to the southwest of Baghdad. We do know that 3-7 Cavalry has been through there because we heard from our Walt Rogers embedded with that group right at that spot. They saw some action there. Now, we don't know much about this place except to tell you that apparently there was some sort of facility found there. That is a broad thing because there are facilities that can make fertilizer, which also can be used to make chemical weapons. General Wes Clark, just give us calibrate us here on what this might possibly be.
Speculation would be that if it's a facility for production, maybe there's, they know it because they found some empty shells there, some warheads for shells. I mean, that's what I would speculate might be found there. Right. Whether there's anything to this or not, you know, as everybody said, we're going to have to develop this because this is huge. This is the smoking gun evidence of chemical weapons, which we have all along believed that the Iraqis have, if we indeed have this.
Perhaps most tantalizing is that point that there were 2 generals captured and apparently talking. Let's move along to Nasiriyah, though, where we will get back to our discussion of the prisoners of war, which, as Aaron pointed out correctly, is the lead story of the day. Give us some backstory on what was going on in Nasiriyah first, if you would, General Clark. First of all, the very important bridge there, which I'm going to point out to you right in the center of town there. Not a big place, but nevertheless very strategic. What was going on?
looks like that this was on the boundary between the 3rd Infantry Division and the Marines, and somehow both forces were going to use Nasiriyah and the bridges. So what we had was the Marines following some elements of the 3rd Infantry Division, which had already passed through or around Nasiriyah. In fact, we even had reports yesterday, Miles, that that bridge had been, or at least one of the bridges had been secured. But this morning, when the Marines drove into town, apparently it wasn't secure. Whether the enemy had come in overnight or been reorganized or something, suddenly there was stiff resistance. And that stiff resistance led to a day-long fight with the reconnaissance battalion of one of the Marine regiments.
General, let me ask a basic leadership question, if I can. What are captured Americans allowed to say, or what is the expectation that military leaders have that they will say when they're in captivity? And just add to that a little bit, what does the international law allow and not allow?
Well, it's basically, there's a code of conduct that every American soldier memorizes. This came out of our experience in the Korean War, and we basically have always said it's name, rank, serial number, date of birth. But as a result of the experience of the Vietnam POWs, there's a general understanding also that people will eventually give some information under duress. And so the basic rule is that you resist giving information for as long as possible, and you should attempt to abide by the strict limitations of the Code of Conduct.
And just again, in this, just the second part of the question, the Geneva Convention that covers this in terms of how the capturing nation is entitled to do or not do with these POWs.
Well, they're not allowed to be tortured. They're not allowed to be subjected to mistreatment or abuse. They're supposed to be safeguarded. They're supposed to be given medical aid and food and shelter. They are, of course, going to be disarmed. Normally, the officers are segregated from the soldiers and non-commissioned officers.
Thank you very much, General. We'll be talking more to you tonight. Coming up in about a half an hour, we're going to talk to a reporter in El Paso, Texas, who has talked to the mother of one of those young Americans. And Larry King, coming up at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, Larry King will have an interview with the mother of one of them. And she is aware her son has been taken captive, obviously, and that's coming up ahead. We'll give you more information as we go on that. The president returned to the White House today fairly early on as this story was developing. After being briefed by his military advisors, the president did make some broad comments about those who are holding the 5 Americans tonight.
I am concerned about our troops. Obviously, anytime one of our soldiers loses a life, I grieve with their parents and their loved ones. And if there is somebody captured, and it looks like there may be, I expect those people to be treated humanely.
That was the president as he returned from Camp David. Today's news is especially difficult at Fort Bliss in Texas. That's the Army base, home to the 507th Maintenance Company. That's what these young soldiers were. They were a maintenance group. They were there to fix broken down trucks and other things. They were not there to fight it out, if you will, in that sense of the term. CNN's Ed Lavandera joins us from the area now with more on the reaction there. Ed?
Aaron, well, when we spoke the last hour, there was some question as to just how many family members and if all of the family members involved in this situation had been notified. A spokesperson here at the base says that they are fairly certain, and that's as best as they could couch it at this point, that all of the family members have been notified so far, but they say they are working overtime to make sure that all of that has happened properly. The soldiers that are involved, of course, were deployed from here just in February to go off, and they're actually technically under the command of the 3rd Infantry Division, working a maintenance unit here out of Fort Bliss, Texas. So they say, and also another point to pass along is that these soldiers, that even though they work in a maintenance unit, that no one should be under the impression that they aren't properly outfitted when they're out in the battlefield like this. We're told that they do carry M16A1 machine guns, as well as all the other gear that a soldier would work with on the front lines. But there was a press briefing that was supposed to have happened here just about an hour and a half ago, and that was abruptly canceled because officials say here that the situation is still very fluid and they just not confident enough to go public with all the information they have at this point. So a lot of information still getting here, as many of the family members that are in and around Fort Bliss here desperately wait for any kind of information to come from the battlefield. Aaron?
And our hearts go out to them. Thank you very much. Ed Lavandera in Texas again at 8:45 tonight, give or take. Okay, we'll talk to a reporter from El Paso who has talked to the mother of one of the young Americans who was taken captive today. And then at 9 o'clock on Larry King Live, Larry will be talking with that woman who has graciously agreed on such a difficult day to talk to us. In a minute, we'll show you how some of what the Iraqis are seeing on their TV news. You'd never guess it was the same war, or in some cases even a war at all. Not unexpectedly, they see it from their own perspective. But for the British, there's no question that this is a war, and it has been a very tough one for them. They've taken some losses. We'll take you to the middle of an artillery duel when our special report live from the front lines continues on a Sunday night.
Dave. Larry. How is that Dell consolidation going? TCO's down. Uptime? Highly available. Great. And you? You know, we're still running a proprietary Unix-based system. Right.
A Dell flexible solution with Dell PowerEdge servers and Intel Xeon processors can help manage your enterprise for less. Easy as Dell. Call or go online today.
Let's say one phone company provides you long distance and a completely different one has your local service. Now, you probably pay too much for both of them, but you let it slide until you discover that with the neighborhood, you can get unlimited local and long distance together for one low monthly price. And just for good measure, extras like caller ID are included.
Get 50% off your first month in the neighborhood. Call 1-800-JOIN-MCI before May 1st. Over 1 million have joined.
How about you?
CNN Tonight, the march towards Baghdad. We're live from the front lines, the risks facing reporters in the field, in the midst of battle with the troops, plus ambassadors from Kuwait, Turkey, and more. Only on Larry King, CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
Millions of Americans, of course, are watching this most unusual war coverage, this marriage of technology and war all day and all night. People in Iraq are getting quite a different version of what's happening from state-run TV as the coalition forces work their way toward Baghdad. CNN's Tim Lister now with the battle by state-run Iraqi TV to try and score psychological points in a time of war.
Besides its coverage of the U.S. soldiers killed or captured near Nasiriyah, Iraqi television has also kept up a steady stream of reports about resistance to the U.S.-led campaign. At an undisclosed location, Iraqi soldiers trample on the remains of a missile, its English-language markings clearly visible. Also shown, damage to a Baghdad neighborhood in a bombing raid. The newsreader says 24 civilians were injured and accuses the United States of lying when it says it's using only so-called smart bombs. And there's more footage of hospital casualties, part of a concerted effort to support the claim that the US campaign is ranging well beyond military targets. Also on the main evening news, what appears to be Saddam Hussein in relaxed mood, meeting military commanders. The announcer says the meeting took place Sunday. There's no way of verifying that, but it's clearly part of a campaign to show that the regime is still in complete control of the situation. To reinforce the point, repeated airings of defiant words from Vice President Taha Yassin Ramadan, his first appearance before the press since the war began. At a later news conference, a taunting distinction drawn between American and British forces.
We hope and we wish that we can fight Americans and not the British. But they are aggressors.
Many observers are surprised that Iraqi TV is still on the air, pumping out a stream of patriotic songs and scenes when not carrying news reports. U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says it's risky to attack the television station and its broadcast facilities.
They have put their communication systems in downtown Baghdad and commingled civil actions, civil activities with military activities. And they've done it in very close proximity to large numbers of innocent men, women, and children.
In the battle for hearts and minds, the main evening news from Iraqi television also gives extensive coverage to anti-war demonstrations around the world, including in the United States. No opportunity missed to persuade the Iraqi people that there's universal international condemnation of the American-led campaign. Tim Lister, CNN.
Propaganda, Wolf, is a fabulous thing to watch unfold. It's just the most interesting thing in the world.
And we're seeing extensive propaganda, of course. You know, Arab media reported today that a coalition plane went down over Baghdad. That set off a frantic search by Iraqi troops along the Tigris River. The troops fired wildly at the water, where they say 2 coalition pilots had parachuted from their planes. Coalition officials firmly deny that any aircraft or pilots were lost over Baghdad. 2 British flyers did die today when their plane was mistakenly shot down by a U.S. missile. Both U.S. and British commanders talked about the accident during today's Central Command briefing.
Earlier this morning, an American Patriot battery is thought to have downed a British Tornado in an accident that is both tragic and under investigation. The crew are, at this point, listed as missing. In the various combat actions and accidents that have taken the lives of many of our comrades in this campaign, all of us mourn them.
We don't know the full circumstances of the incident earlier today, but there is clear evidence to suggest that a US Patriot missile battery shot down an RAF Tornado GR4. A detailed investigation is underway, so we must not rush to judge. We need to establish exactly how this happened so we can take steps to minimize the risks in the future. But we have checked our current procedures and we are satisfied.
Both commanders emphasized that despite the accident, the U.S. and British forces are working together smoothly. British forces got trapped in fierce fighting today with pockets of Iraqi resistance in southern Iraq. Reporter Philip Ray Smith was with the troops when the ground battle broke out.
Watching over burning oil fields, these British troops were the first to enter the country, but until yesterday hadn't even encountered Iraqi resistance. After sundown, everything changed. It was all hands to the deck. Iraqi artillery were firing in the area and getting closer with every shot. Proof that hostile forces were not yet spent.
Just over an hour ago, we came under attack by Iraqi artillery. After bombarding them with 105mm rounds, they're now either in retreat or immobilized.
The empty ammo tins stacked up. This was counter-attack on a large scale. Artillery against artillery, it was a simple battle for ground. More World War I than World War III.
Let's get it sorted out, guys. Let's get the ammunition sorted. Get ready to engage again. All right, is it?
A jammed round put one gun out of action, not enough to endanger the fire mission.
What they have seen is remaining troops closing in on one specific building, and they're all now flying the white flag. All right, so that's the end of that small battle.
Today, the guns are still firing at Iraqi positions. Even outside the cities, this war is not a walkover. This is Philip Ray Smith in southern Iraq.
And Aaron, if you listen closely to the sounds going on here in Kuwait City right now, the sounds behind me, you'll hear the first morning call to prayer for the faithful. I assume that same sound is now blasting in Baghdad as well. We heard it last night. We'll hear it for, I guess, at every time this night. It's now almost morning here in the Persian Gulf.
Thank you. Monday morning in the Gulf, Sunday night here. British television agency ITN, whose reporting has been terrific, and some of it, which you just saw, is now confirming that one of its correspondents who has been covering the war has died. Terry Lloyd and 2 other members of his team were killed in southern Iraq. Apparently, this was a friendly fire incident. They were killed by coalition forces firing at Iraqi troops. Terry was the longest serving correspondent for ITN, and he is the first correspondent for that company to die on assignment in the agency's 48-year history. Terry Lloyd. Our coverage continues in just a moment.
CNN Tonight, the risks facing reporters on the Iraqi front lines, plus ambassadors from Kuwait, Turkey, and more. Only on Larry King CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
You are cordially invited to a college graduation. Your own graduation. It will be held a lot sooner than you think, because at University of Phoenix, you can earn your bachelor's or master's degree in the most efficient way possible. Attend just one class and one learning team meeting per week at a convenient campus location, or attend class online whenever and wherever you want. Most students earn their degree in just 2 to 3 years. Designed for working adults, University of Phoenix is the largest private accredited university in the U.S. We offer degrees in business, e-business, management, IT, marketing, accounting, education, criminal justice, nursing, and more. Accept our invitation to your success. Call 1-800-430-2001. One phone call is all it takes. Start earning your degree today. University of Phoenix. Call today at 1-800-430-2001.
CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Heidi Collins in the CNN newsroom. We'll have more coverage right after these headlines. U.S. Central Command says 12 U.S. soldiers are now unaccounted for in southern Iraq. It's believed they were captured after an ambush. The Arab language network Al Jazeera showed pictures of Americans it said were killed or captured in the fighting outside the southern city of Nasiriyah. President Bush cautioned Iraqis on their treatment of any American prisoners.
The POWs I expect to be treated humanely. And just like we're treating the prisoners that we have captured humanely. If not, the people who mistreat the prisoners will be treated as war criminals.
The Kurds in northern Iraq, longtime enemies of Saddam Hussein, could be closer to launching an attack of their own on Iraq's leader. Kurdish forces are reported to be amassed along the border between Turkey and Iraq, waiting for a decision on whether indeed they will attack. Investigators are trying to find out why an Army sergeant allegedly tossed 4 grenades into tents at Camp Pennsylvania in Kuwait, killing 1 soldier and wounding 15 others. Hassan Akbar is in military custody and could be sent back to the 101st Airborne's base in Kentucky for military proceedings. CNN's Carl Penhall reports that U.S. forces attacked Iraq's elite Republican Guard in an intense firefight early Monday, Iraqi time. The fighting lasted about 3 hours. U.S. officials had said facing the Republican Guard would bring stiffer resistance than regular Iraqi army units. Humanitarian aid is being loaded, and President Bush says that massive amounts of aid should be on their way to Iraq within the next 36 hours. The president says coalition forces are securing southern Iraq and the country's only port to make the area safe. During the next half hour of CNN's coverage on the war in Iraq, we have a report from one of our embedded correspondents on the front lines. Also, democracy in the streets. Supporters of the Bush administration's war policy want to make sure their voices are heard too. And Kuwait's ambassador to the U.S. is among the guests on Larry King Live at the top of the hour. Those are the headlines making news at this hour. I'll be back with more in about 30 minutes.
Well, it's hard to believe in many respects, but this is only the 5th day of the war, yet military analysts say that American aircraft have already flown more than 6,000 combat missions. Good many of them originate from the USS Constellation out in the Persian Gulf. CNN's Frank Buckley is embedded with the sailors out there, and he joins us now.
Aaron, the air operations continue here aboard the USS Constellation. We've been seeing aircraft take off throughout the night and then be recovered on the flight deck here of the USS Constellation. We're told that the jets that are leaving from this aircraft carrier are flying into Iraq. They are involved in strikes against defense installations, air defense sites, communications facilities, and they're also going after leadership targets. In some cases, these aircraft are dropping leaflets onto Iraq flying ahead of coalition troops attempting to reach Iraqi troops with these leaflets requesting that they surrender. We talked to one pilot tonight who had just returned from a flight in which he flew over Baghdad to drop some of those leaflets. We told him upon his return about the fact that Americans were being held prisoner. All pilots know that when they fly over Iraq that this could happen to them if they were shot down. We asked this pilot for his thoughts.
I think it's unfortunate, but also I know those guys are well trained, and I know they can take care of themselves. And as long as the Iraqis are abiding by the Geneva Conventions, I think they'll be treated fairly, and no harm should come to them. It's in the back of our minds, and I think a lot of the pre-flight preparation that we go into each flight, we think about it. Once you're in the air, you kind of put it out of your mind.
So again, air operations continuing off the USS Constellation. We're told that during the most recent 24-hour cycle that 28 different strike sorties have taken place off the USS Constellation. Aaron?
Frank, thank you. Frank Buckley. That's a good reminder that this war goes on, even as we have focused a lot today on the POW story and will again before this half hour is over. Wolf?
Thanks, Aaron. Earlier today, I had a chance to speak to the Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, about those soldiers missing in Iraq, now believed to be prisoners of war. He shared his thoughts on that as well as on the progress of the war. Secretary Rumsfeld, thanks so much for joining us. I know this is an incredibly busy time for you, but let's get right to some of the immediate issues at hand. First of all, as you well know, within the past few moments, the Al Jazeera Arabic language television network has broadcast Iraqi television video of American POWs that they say are now in the hands of Iraqi officials, some of them alive, others killed in action. What can you tell us about this?
There have been reports throughout the morning here in the East Coast to the effect that some U.S. soldiers were unaccounted for. Whether the ones that are being shown on that particular station or not, that network, are those individuals, I'm not in a position to say. We do know that the Geneva Convention makes it illegal for prisoners of war to be shown and pictured and humiliated. And it's something that the United States does not do. And needless to say, television networks that carry such pictures are I would say, doing something that's unfortunate.
Will this affect the course of the war, the fact that the Iraqis now have American POWs?
The course of this war is clear. The outcome is clear. The regime of Saddam Hussein is gone. It's over. It will not be there in a relatively reasonably predictable period of time. And the people in Iraq need to know that it will not be long before they will be liberated. The leadership and the military in Iraq needs to know that they should act with honor and stop defending a regime that is shortly going to be history.
Mr. Secretary, this broadcast is being seen live around the world, including in Iraq. What is your message to those Iraqi government officials who now have control of these American prisoners?
That they treat those prisoners according to the Geneva Convention, just as we treat Iraqi prisoners according to the Geneva Convention. And further, I would say that they'd be well advised to put down their arms, follow the instructions that have been communicated, and act with honor, and help liberate the Iraqi people from the vicious, repressive regime of Saddam Hussein. The outcome is clear.
When you say it's predictable, the outcome is clear, how much time do you think it will take for the U.S. and British forces to achieve their objective?
At the present time, there are U.S., British, Australian, and Polish forces that are on the ground. There's some 46 nations that are publicly, politically supporting this coalition effort. There is a broad and deep coalition that is being enormously helpful in this effort. And their forces are wonderful, fine young people as well. The time is going to depend on how much resistance there is, and the loss of life will depend on how much resistance there is. And our hope and our prayer is that this will end soon with a minimal loss of life on the part of the Iraqis as well as the U.S. and coalition forces.
The Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld earlier today, a Defense Secretary who minces no words. Aaron?
Never does. Well, thank you. On the subject of POWs, to this point, American audiences watching American television at least have not heard any of the names of the 5. That's about to change. We're joined now by Diana Washington Valdez, who's a reporter with the El Paso Times. Diana interviewed Anacita Hudson, who is the mother of 23-year-old Joseph Hudson, who was taken prisoner in Iraq today. Diana, it's good to see you. How did Joe Hudson's mom learn that he was taken?
Yes, she herself and other friends of hers who are Filipino subscribe to a satellite Filipino channel 2, ABC-CBN. One of these friends called her and said, immediately turn on your television and switch over to that channel. As soon as she turned on the TV, she tuned in just as her son was being interviewed, and she recognized him immediately. This was at 10:35 a.m. this morning.
Again, we saw just briefly there Joe Hudson. Give me, Diana, her state of mind. Obviously, she was concerned. Was she confident that her boy was going to get out alive?
Obviously, she was very distraught. She told us that out of all the GIs who were over there, she couldn't imagine why her son was captured. She's very concerned about his well-being, his state of mind, and how he's being treated. As she saw the image of him, she said to me, my Joseph, he looks scared, just as a mother would be concerned. And she would like very much to count on the president, she said, to fulfill his promise to get them out of there.
We would also say, if she's watching now, as we saw that tape earlier ago, he also looks strong. His voice was strong, and she should be proud of him. To find out this way, as opposed to a formal notification, must be enormously not just shocking but difficult. Was she? When you talked to her, was she in tears? Could you tell? I gather this is a phone conversation that you had with her.
No, we went to her house in Alamogordo, New Mexico. While we were there, she showed us a picture of her son and his younger brother, who also joined us for the interview. And as we talked off and on, she would clutch and hold on to the picture, just as though she was trying to hold on to her son.
The son is an 18-year-old, as I recall.
The son who's in the military, the one who's captured, is 23 years old.
Right. No, the son who was with Mrs.
Yes,
Hudson.
Anthony is 18 years old. Yes.
Yeah. Is she surrounded by a group, a support group? I don't mean official support group, but does she have good friends in the area who can be supportive of her and take care of her?
Yes, there was about a dozen or more neighbors who had shown up at the house. This is a close-knit neighborhood, a military neighborhood by Holloman Air Force Base, and many of the people who live there are retirees. One of the neighbors told us he watched Joseph grow up. He lived next door to them, to the family, for 20 years, and he too was just as shocked at the turn of events.
Just to orient our viewers a bit, the picture you're looking at is a picture of the El Paso Times shot today of Joseph Hudson's mother and his younger brother. Tell me, Diana, tell us all what you can about Joseph Hudson. He is more than a name, and he is more than a prisoner of war.
Yes, indeed. He grew up, spent many years in Alamogordo. He graduated from Alamogordo High School. He worked for a while at a dining hall at Holloman Air Force Base, later at a Sonic fast food eatery. before he joined the Army. He's the son of an Air Force retiree who's deceased now, David Hudson. So he's grown up around the military all his life. He's married to a woman named Natalie and has a 5-year-old daughter named Cameron.
And have you been able to get in touch with either, well, not with, certainly not his daughter, Aaron. Have you been able to get in touch with his wife?
No, his wife was at a closed briefing at Fort Bliss for the families who were being notified about what had happened. There was to be a press conference at Fort Bliss following a briefing, but the officials canceled that press conference, so we were not given any more access to any more family members.
And do you know now, just to slightly off, take a slight turn, do you know now if all of the family members of these 5 young Americans have been notified?
No, I personally do not. I cannot say that all of them have been. Whoever they were able to get a hold of this afternoon and were taken to the post or arrived at the post were the ones who were, at the briefing.
When did Mrs. Hudson last talk to her son or see her son, do you know?
Yes, about 3 weeks ago when his unit, 507 Maintenance Company, was being deployed, were on their way to Kuwait. She went for that departure ceremony at Fort Bliss, and that was only 3 weeks ago, and the next time she sees him is on television as a prisoner of war.
Diana Washington Valdez, that's a nice piece of reporting. I've read the story. It's a sensitive and thoughtful piece of work, and thank you for sharing some of it with us tonight. Diana Washington Valdez is a reporter for the El Paso Times, and who was given the most difficult assignment, and should you read her story online or wherever, I think you'll see that she handled it well. Mrs. Hudson, Anacita Hudson is her name, will be a guest of Larry King's coming up at the top of the hour on Larry King Live. We know sometimes that people in these situations want very much for you to know who their son, their husband is. Not just that they are names, and not just that they are prisoners, that they have lives and hopes and all the rest. And so she will join Larry coming up at 9 o'clock Eastern Time right after this program. Wolf.
And unfortunately, Aaron, it's probably not going to be the end of these kinds of stories that are going to be written. Indeed, military families around the United States are bearing the emotional brunt of this war already. CNN's Thelma Gutierrez, for example, is at Camp Pendleton in California. Thelma, a lot of sad people over there as well.
Wolf, I can tell you that the mood here is very tense, very somber. After all, this is a base of 40,000 people during peacetime. This is also a base where they have learned that in the first 2 days of the conflict, at least, that 6 U.S. Marines who were based right here have been killed. And again, they're waiting for those numbers to go up. Now you can see that the flag right beside me, Wolf, flies at half staff in memory of those who've lost their lives in the recent days. Today, early today, many here turn to their faith to help them cope.
We pray for all the victims of war. We pray for the men and women of our military, which we remember daily. We remember those who have died in the conflict so far. May God bring them the fullness of life and console their families. We also pray for the men, women, and children of Iraq.
At St. Mary's Star of the Sea Catholic Church, right outside of Camp Pendleton, many military families gathered. They told us that they were there to seek solace and comfort during these difficult times. A book of remembrance in the church has the names of hundreds of Marines now serving in the Persian Gulf. One woman placed her husband's picture near the altar for prayers. Now this morning we spoke to several wives whose husbands are in the Persian Gulf.
I've always turned to God and to church for everything, and being here, yes, does give me comfort.
It's been difficult, but I have complete faith in why we're over there and in my husband's abilities. I told him the night before he left that I believe in you, and that was the last thing I said when I said goodbye.
It's scary. Knowing that the closer we're getting to Baghdad, I know it's going to get uglier, and that's very scary.
No doubt this is a very trying time on the children as well. They talked to us, and they also told us that they had a message that they'd like to send to their fathers who are serving in the military.
I love and miss him, and we can probably have fun when he comes back.
Is there anything you'd like to say to your dad?
I hope he comes home safe.
Can you tell me, do you miss your dad?
I miss my dad. I miss him very much, and I hope he comes back soon and safely.
Now, the fathers of all the children that you heard from are serving in the Persian Gulf right now. The kids very worried. In fact, Wolf, we had a woman who came up to us. She was in tears. She asked us not to show those photographs. She said she was very disturbed by the photographs that had been shown of the men who were killed very recently, the POWs. And so she said that this was very, very hard time, very disturbing pictures to look at.
For military families all over the country, I'm sure it's very disturbing indeed for all Americans. Thelma Gutierrez at Camp Pendleton in California. Thank you very much. Iraq may be planning to use women and children as human shields. A military source tells CNN coalition soldiers on reconnaissance missions, 4 troops headed into central Iraq, have reported such a possibility. They say they've seen members of the Iraqi Republican Guard herding Iraqi women and children to military positions. The Prime Minister of Turkey confirmed in a national address today his country has given the U.S. permission to use its airspace to fly into Iraq. The Joint Chiefs Chairman, General Richard Myers, says U.S. planes have already flown over Turkey to insert forces into northern Iraq. Meanwhile, President Bush says very firmly U.S. officials have made it, quote, very clear they want Turkish troops to stay out of northern Iraq. Aaron?
Wolf, Dr. Sanjay Gupta has gone from doctor to war correspondent to doctor again. He's well, almost doctor again. He's in an operating room right now in Kuwait. And Doc, just tell us what this is a MASH unit of some sort, I gather.
Yeah, Aaron, this is actually called a forward resuscitated surgical suite. For the first time ever, they're actually able to set up these tents literally in the middle of the desert, in austere conditions that you've seen. And they set these tents up in 45 minutes to create an operating room. And right now I'm watching, as we're speaking, for the first time, the first ever abdominal operation for a gunshot wound to the abdomen. About 4 o'clock in the morning, local time here, these doctors over here, they're called the Devil Docs, got a call, actually, about a gunshot wound coming in. They all awaited as a helicopter came in and brought the patient to the area. And they came in quickly, assessed the patient, decided the patient needed an operation. Again, all of this in a tent in the desert, and they brought the patient back to the operating room. They had general anesthesia, they had scrub sinks, they had all the supplies, just like you'd think they would have in an operating room back stateside. And right now, as we speak, they are doing the operation.
I'm sorry, how do they keep it sterile?
Well, they have it's a pretty sophisticated. First of all, they have a floor, which is unusual, different from a lot of the other tents. That floor actually keeps a lot of the dust and sand from coming out. The tents are 2 layers, in places 3 layers. That allows the sand and dust to remain outside as well. They have scrub sinks with running water, which is how the surgeons wash their hands. They have all the sterile gloves and gowns, which is how they keep themselves clean.
Do you have any idea how long it was from the time the soldier was shot to the time he was on the table?
This is critical, Aaron. Perfect question. It's less than an hour. They talk about the golden hour. Instead of taking a injured soldier like this back to definitive care, which could have taken a lot longer, the whole concept behind what we're describing now is that the operating room comes forward. And that reduces the wait time to less than an hour. That's critical, Aaron.
Wolf, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, Sanjay, are most of the doctors, the surgeons, the nurses, they're reservists, or are they active duty personnel in terms of career officers?
They're a combination of both, Wolf. The lead surgeon here is actually a reservist. His assistant, I'm standing here behind him, is actually a career doc. He was someone who worked in the Navy for quite some time, has seen many different conflicts. So they're really a combination of both. I'll tell you, there's 7 people in the operating room, including an anesthesiologist, actually 3 surgeons, one assistant, one is just observing. There's a circulating nurse, there are scrub nurses. This looks just like home, except I keep reminding myself that we're in the middle of the desert here. Well,
and do they have all the kind of sophisticated equipment you would have in Atlanta in some sort of shock trauma unit or surgical unit that you would normally have in an emergency hospital in a major U.S. city?
The thing that they don't have is they don't have imaging tests. They don't have things like CAT scanners and X-rays and MRIs. A patient like this may have gotten some of those imaging studies ahead of time. Instead, what they have to do is rely much more on what's known as the clinical exam, literally looking over things and trying to guess a little bit what's going on inside based on their clinical exam. You see a lot more hands-on and a lot less imaging being done here in the desert to figure out what's going on. But as you know, they're getting well into this operation here. It looks like their diagnosis based on their clinical exam was absolutely right in terms of what the bullet had actually done inside in the abdomen.
Sanjay, would it be fair to say that what they are trying to do here is to save a life, make sure that they can then move him back to a better medical facility should that be necessary, but this is triage?
That is correct. Now, and they are doing an operation here. In the past, they would have simply literally put on a bandage and probably sent a patient like this back to USS Comfort or back posterior to more definitive care. Those patients, they figured out over time, did not do well. So they're doing an operation here, but this patient's definitive care ultimately will be received somewhere else, somewhere further back than here. But again, in terms of the aggressiveness of the treatment, this far forward, this is the first time this has been done.
Doc, do me a favor, if you will, and just come back to us around in the 10 o'clock hour and update us on how this all went. I hate to leave this hanging. Nice piece of reporting, though. Thank you. Dr. Sanjay Gupta in an operating room out in the desert. Alessio Vinci is out in the desert as well, one of our embedded correspondents, and he's had this exclusive look at events playing out there.
Hours after the U.S. armored column came under attack in An-Nazariya, the body of one Marine was being wrapped in an American flag and carried to a waiting helicopter which had just landed nearby. He was one of many Marines to die in this intense battle to control an important supply route for U.S. forces trying to reach Baghdad to the north. The charred remains of one of the vehicles still smoldering, a testimony to the ferocity of the fight as Iraqi forces used rocket-propelled grenades to destroy the heavily armored personnel carrier, killing everyone on board. Nearby, a second armored vehicle heavily damaged, the burned gear of another Marine lying on the ground. Earlier in the day, only 6 miles away, another deadly attack against American forces in the region. A U.S. military supply convoy was ambushed as it lost its way around the unfamiliar territory. Many of those ambushed were killed or taken hostage.
Several hours after the Iraqi forces ambushed a U.S. military supply convoy, Iraqi forces continue to engage the U.S. military, who is responding with heavy machine gun fire and 40mm grenades.
Advancing U.S. Marines, many of them as young as 19 and seeing their first combat, called for air support as they attempted to enter the city of An-Nazariya. U.S. military commanders say helicopters and planes managed to destroy several Iraqi tanks, trucks and anti-aircraft batteries. But somehow commanders here say they did not manage to prevent serious losses in the fiercest battle yet of the Iraqi conflict. Alessio Vinci, CNN, with the U.S. Marines in An-Nazariya, Iraq.
That's our coverage for this hour. Monday morning in Baghdad. Wolf will talk again tomorrow. We'll see you all again, 10 o'clock Eastern Time for Newsnight. Larry King Live is next. Good night.
Thanks, Aaron. Larry King Live with CNN's continuing coverage of the war in Iraq. Tonight, we'll talk with the mother of one of the U.S. soldiers taken prisoner by Iraq today, and we'll learn what those POWs might be going through from 3 men who were taken prisoner during the '91 Gulf War. Air Force Colonel David Eberly, the senior-ranking coalition POW, plus Marine Major Joseph Small, and Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Dale Storp, also reporters on the front lines with the troops, plus Air Force Lieutenant General retired Larry Farrell, U.S. Army Colonel retired David Hackworth, and the view from Iraq's Middle Eastern neighbors with ambassadors from Kuwait, Turkey, Jordan, and Egypt. We begin with Nick Robertson in Amman, Jordan. That is his new post. How long do you intend to be there, Nick? How long, and then when do you move on and where to?
Larry, really as short as possible, I hope. I'd like to be able to go back to Baghdad, or at least back into Iraq. That really just depends on how swiftly coalition forces can prosecute this war against the leadership in Baghdad. If they can move into that capital quickly, then I think from here we'll be able to get back into Iraq fairly swiftly. For now, the plan is for me to remain here. We have a lot of other good correspondents in the region, and we all just have to take our turn on this story as it develops.